Many congratulations on your government's first anniversary. You know, you've always been quoted as a man in a hurry. A year in New Delhi, have you come to terms with the fact that there is a certain pace at which Delhi functions, which may not always be at pace with somebody like yourself?
Not at all. I'm actually extremely grateful to all my colleagues in the ministries for their enthusiasm, which has kept pace with mine. I'm extremely grateful for the hard work they've put in. And after the end of 1 year, we have started the second year with renewed vigor and passion. And we want to only better the first year.
24/7 is a tall promise, and by every account, when you, your government, your Prime Minister made that promise, there was a lot of speculation around it. Promises like these had been made in the past, but you're someone who's worked non-stop on that promise. A year down the line, does the task look daunting?
First of all, neither is it a tall promise, nor is the task daunting. Prime Minister Modi did that when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, and I'm only scaling it up, using a lot of best practices from his own experiences. I keep getting his guidance and unmitigated support whenever I need any help. And at the end of 1 year, when we have achieved almost every parameter that we set out to do, whether it's the highest increase in power generation in 20 years, the highest increase in coal production in 23 years. You know, Coal India, a laggard by all your standards, added 32 million tons in 1 year, of which we were there only for 10 months, against 31 million added in 4 years, 10 to 14. And what is the current year run rate? In the first 2 months, April and May, Coal India production, Supriya, has gone up by 11.8%. Now, that's not a mean feat. It's the same people.
And for a laggard like Coal India, it's a huge feat of achievement.
Transmission capacity. Not that I started these lines, but then they were all in different stages of delay. We focused on implementation, got them right of way, got them financial support. We increased 22,100 circuit kilometers. In the history of India, it hasn't happened. 22,500 megawatt of new installed capacity. In the history of India, it hasn't happened. Now, these are all indicators of the enthusiasm in the sector. You're once again seeing M&As in this sector. There are a lot of investor interests internationally and within India.
I'm going to come to investors in just a bit, yes. But you know, I know data supports what you started off by doing, but you're someone who also understands finances. You understand the numbers, and which is why I have a frank question to ask you before I move forward on the sector per se. While yes, transmission has picked up, generation is looking better, coal output is looking better, you've conducted the first coal auction. The biggest laggard for the sector really is funding and financing. And because you're somebody who understands that money is important for a sector like this, how do you plan to go about financing? Because if you speak to banks, they believe power is a sector they're wary with. They're staring at huge NPAs, some of them on account of the power sector. They're not comfortable lending just yet. They're also not adequately capitalized. So just from a power minister's point of view, how are you going to look at solving that financing piece? And is the time ripe for something like a power sector fund to bail out stressed assets?
Well, the power sector fund is something we've been talking about. Now the Honorable Finance Minister has come out with the concept of an investment fund, which will encompass all the infrastructure sectors. So power fund in a way becomes a subset now of that infrastructure fund. And we do believe that there is some stress in the system, which this fund can look at dispassionately on a professional basis. There may be opportunities in the marketplace for this fund to pick up some assets. But end of the day, if certain wrong decisions were made, the system will have to bear that. What we are focusing on is ensuring a sustainable framework. And when I talk of, for example, renewable, I'm looking at solar parks, I'm looking at bundling with thermal to keep costs low. Right. I'm arranging for green corridors to transmit it. I'm looking at dollar tariffs which make it so much more interesting for lenders internationally to come and invest in India. They get a hedge against any rupee devaluation. They get a capital return in dollar. I create a self-hedge mechanism. So I don't have to pay 7 and 8% for hedging my dollar risk. Yes. But I do it internally at the cost which India has over the years suffered. I mean, India in the last 25 years has only seen 3.5% rupee depreciation in the long range. Yes. Yes. So why should India be paying 8% for hedging the dollar to foreign banks?
Because you understand that language and because you understand the language of investors, they were in a wait and watch mode initially when you had promised these things. They were waiting and watching. Are these also the question of, you know, big talk that happens? Are you going to walk the talk? What kind of investor interest are you seeing right now?
Supriya, I can share
and it will not be suffice to say that they are excited about India anymore.
No. I'll be very specific.
Yes.
I had interaction in the next room with the transmission industry, all the players. Their biggest grouse is that, look, we want to do much more. International companies said we want to invest much more, bid out as many lines. And country needs transmission desperately.
Yes.
It's the laggard for so many years. I don't see anything stopping at least 100,000 crores or $18 billion of transmission lines being bid out in the next 6 to 8 months. In terms of solar and renewable energy, while the investment upfront may look large, but the potential upside in the long run, particularly when there's no added operating cost, you spend 6-8 lakh rupees per megawatt.
That's right.
And you're sorted out. The big ticket is the interest cost, where I'm looking at innovative financing solutions. Moment I offered dollar tariffs, I have people from all over the world. I was in London, I was in New York, in Washington.
That's right, yes.
Everybody wants to invest in the sector. The Japanese have been coming with regular periodicity, committing large bucks. As the framework develops, as the solar parks come on stream, the transmission is set up. In rooftop, people are looking at becoming aggregators of rooftop to invest in that sector because there's a direct consumer-investor interface.
Yes.
So I'm quite confident that, of course, the overall macro climate, the overall industrial growth and the pace at which industry grows and demand for power increases are things we are watching. But at the same time, there are 280 million people without power.
Fair point indeed, and I'm sure they are the focus of your policy making at every stage. At least your Prime Minister insists so, and you've been following that model. But I will go back to banks for just a minute before I go on to UMPPs. Like I said, there are stressed assets in the system. You're trying to unclog the system, but there are just so many stressed projects that are still stranded there. What are you going to do about those projects? Because banks are not willing to park in any more money.
Well,
and I remember initially when you were taken over, you were in touch with banks. You spoke to the CMDs of most banks. I remember that very clearly.
Well, I think the banks will have to be a little more proactive and start taking faster decisions. Sadly, the banks have not been able to understand and could not appreciate the pace at which this sector has expanded in the last 1 year. Now that they have the figures before them, they realize that this is the sector which is happening. It's a sector, the money is safe, it's growing rapidly. Fuel problems are getting resolved. Solar and wind and all the renewable sources are being encouraged, which are safer investments. They are not dependent on imports or raw material at all. Sun and wind will always be there. So I'm finding that the bankers are in a mood to resolve issues. The gas-based stranded plants, which was a big cause of stress, have now become a focus area for us. We've done the first transparent bidding of gas. About 11,000 megawatt has purchased gas in the first round, so that much more stress is out of the system.
True.
Each of our moves is adding to the confidence of the sector, and the infrastructure fund will supplement that.
You have an ambitious order in that respect. You were trying to push the UMPPs. You've also appointed a Piyush Sinha committee to submit a report. I have a quick question there. So when is that report expected? And why the need for a third review of UMPP norms? And also a quick added question there. Reliance decided to walk out of the Tilaya UMPP. I know the skies haven't fallen, but is that a setback of sorts on your UMPP program? Because this does give you a sense of how much pain there is in the system.
How much pain there was in the system is what you're alluding to.
Okay.
The UMPPs were bid out in the first round, and then you had this spate of court cases. The UMPPs were bid out in the second round on a modified document in which the bankers came and told me that, look, we are unable to extend finance to these companies who are bidding because the framework on which you have bid out the second time around, while it addresses the problems of the first, actually creates new problems in terms of our security mechanism. Obviously, if the bankers are not going to lend, I'm not going to be able to expand that sector.
Yes.
The soft option would have been to let NTPC take it away, but I don't think that's the objective. NTPC has nearly 30,000 megawatts already under implementation. So we decided that we have an illustrious person, former CVC Piyush Sinha, examine the entire UMPP story in its entirety, take a holistic big picture vision view on that. They are looking at all aspects of the UMPP bidding, the first document, the second document. We'll do a constitution type, pick up the best out of whatever is on the table, add anything which can help make it more robust, and come out with a framework which ensures the extensive participation and success of UMPP bidding. What happened in Reliance is between the states and the company. It is unfortunate that it took so many years for either the states to sort the problem or for the company to come to this decision. I read from some press reports that the states are looking at having it rebid. I have not yet heard about it. Once it comes to me, we'll take an appropriate decision.
You know, you spoke about NTPC and it's decided to be at the forefront of many investments. We're not seeing the private investments still break ground. As somebody, again, who understands finance, who follows monetary moves, Governor Rajan has cut interest rates for the third time this year, but of course, very marginally, so just about 25 basis points. How much of a factor has cost of credit been in installed investments in a sector like power?
Well, in an earlier interaction, I was mentioning that I like the people to have high expectations. It keeps me on my toes, so I have to deliver better. Similarly, it's good for the system that we all expect interest rates to fall much faster. Certainly, lower interest rates will spur growth and bring back a lot of the stalled infrastructure projects into viability. We are happy that the governor has deemed it fit to give us a third round of interest rate cut. Going forward, I'm sure if the economy continues to perform as well, we can hope to look at finer rates in the future.
You know, the government is looking at doing away with the central transmission utility of Power Grid Corporation. You're trying to get private sector involved there. You're trying to open that sector up. Is that the line of thinking?
The line of thinking is that CTU should be an independent entity.
And not with one entity
alone. Part within the Power Grid Corporation, which is today competing with several other players in the transmission field. So it's not that it's being privatized. It will remain with the government of India, but as an independent entity, and it will take a holistic view of the sector dispassionately. So finally in India, today the transmission sector with the separation of POSOCO and CTU from Power Grid, we'll see a level playing field between the public sector and the private sector. Something which industry has been demanding for several years, something which has held back extensive investments in this sector.
You know, you had, in a previous interaction, I remembered, spoken about cozy relationships, and one of your tasks in the last 1 year has been to end them. As the power minister, do you believe there are far too few power players in a sector that had been opened up to private players for such a long while, and which is why you refer to the cozy relationships, the rent seekers?
Well, Supriya, I think it's not as if there are only a few power players. The large ones may be few, but there are a number of mid-size, small-size companies which are in cogen, biogas-based, bagasse-based. There are different companies at different levels. Each one has their own requirements, their own problems. We have to address the issues around the sector. The rent seekers are the companies. When I allude to the rent seekers, I'm talking of those companies who are always looking at some shortcut to try and beat the system. I think those days are over. Prime Minister Modi has a zero tolerance to corruption policy. Prime Minister Modi is committed to the people of India to end this menace of black marketing or any sort of favoritism or discretionary policy. I believe the first year has demonstrated to the world, not only has he acted honorably and fairly during the year, but he's created a robust framework which will sustain for generations to come and ensure that in future the country's natural resources can only serve the poor.
And I think one of the steps is the first successful coal auction. But before I move on to coal, because no conversation is going to complete with you unless I speak about the coal auction, are a majority of players or a majority of industry operators are in that category of rent seekers? They've had it too cozy, too easy for too long.
I would not like to pass judgment on a sweeping basis. The people who have been doing that understand very well who I'm alluding to.
So this is, of course, the first 2 rounds of coal block auction have happened. You have been applauded for it. This has brought transparency to a rather opaque sector. Almost 3 lakh crore worth of money has sparked in. But has the litigation that followed, for whatever reason it did, has that kind of taken the sheen off the coal block auction and made you a little more cautious maybe?
Not at all. There has been some litigation. Each one has his reasons to litigate. They have a right to litigate in the framework of the country's constitution, and we'll wait for the appropriate judgments to come in. I don't see anything that I have done has any element of unfairness or anything which I believe is wrong. But we will let the courts take the final view on that. We are fairly confident the system is robust. We have done it in the most transparent and fair manner. And wherever we found that things were not looking appropriate, we have taken appropriate action on that.
Will you concede that at one level it wasn't a lacuna-free process, so to say? I mean, auction has happened in spectrum. Why were rigging and cartelization charges not evident there?
We have not put any rigging or cartelization charge on anybody.
We know what JSPL and Adani and everybody else has
We have
been
not put
under the
any
scanner
charge. It
for.
may be your charge. You may be answerable for that charge, by the way, Supriya.
No, but I'm just asking you a very simple question. The fact that they have...
We found that in certain mines, the price discovered didn't seem to set into the trend that was discovered on other mines. And we thought we owe it to the people of India to ensure that outliers which don't fit into a general trend in a particular round should be looked at carefully and should not be allowed to proceed lest there be something behind it which is not appropriate. I'm not an investigative agency.
So you just take a precautionary step here?
It's a precautionary step based on my judgment, mine as in the ministry and the department officials' judgment, that there looks to be a price which doesn't fit into the general trend, and it causes some anxiety if we are approving that. It may be subject to question.
You're not putting the charge, but aren't there fears of cartelization for that particular block?
Well, when you have a policeman at the traffic signal, you still have people who break the signal and go.
So, you know, the obvious question is when will the third round of auction happen? But the obvious answer to that perhaps will be you will await for clarity from the courts. Is that what you're going to wait for?
There's also an element of awaiting the clarity from the courts. In some cases, there is no confusion. There we are looking at finding out which are the mines which are in a state of readiness, which can come into production quickly and which can, after the auction process is over, will not get stuck in some form or the other as in the good old days. So we are trying to ensure that what we bid out can be operationalized at the earliest, and once a set of mines which are ready to auction comes up, we'll proceed.
So you've really taken the first step towards cleaning up the coal mess. The next step is obviously going to be commercial coal mining. At what stage are you going to give that priority? At what stage are you going to open it up for the private operators? Because this means investments, this also means efficiency of mining.
Supriya, I had mentioned that my priority is the end-use requirements. Countries starved, end users are starved of coal, and I have to make sure that they get their coal first, and my mines were to be first auction to the end users. I've done that process. I will continue for some more time. Commercial mining will bring in efficiency, but that does not hold me back or the mines which have already been auctioned to bring in efficiency. Right. So there is no rule of the law which says Coal India can't be efficient or any of these bidders or these state governments can't be efficient.
I have a last question to ask of you, and this is a charge that keeps coming up, and I think it's ironical in some sort of way. At one stage, your government has been leveled with charges of being pro-corporate, and then corporate India is impatient with you. So how do you actually, you know, marry the two charges, or how do you refute them both?
Well, the people of India have not put this charge. The people of India have still voted in every survey overwhelmingly to say that we are happy with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We are happy with this government and its work. The people of India stand behind Prime Minister Modi's efforts to clean the rot of several years, to bring in honesty and transparency, make a corruption-free India. So the people of India have not put that charge. Certain elements who've woken up from a slumber or from a holiday are trying to put that charge. But other than a few television channels, I don't think anybody else is buying that charge.
But what about...
This government stands for the poor. It stands for the deprived, for the oppressed, for the people who have been left behind for generations. And this government stands committed to serve them. Corporates have a role to play in that, but only as long as they play fair. If any of them is looking for extra benefits or unfair and undue advantage, they are not going to get it from this government.
how do you view the sections of Indian industry that lauded you when you came to office and that are now beginning to say, you know what, we are getting impatient?
Well, if they are impatient, I have no problem because their impatience helps me to perform better. Just like I like the people of India to have high expectations from me, if industry also has high expectations, I'm happy with that. That will keep me on my toes so I don't get complacent in my work.
Yes.
But if they are impatient because they are not getting the benefits they did in the last many years, I'm sorry, I have no solution for that.
I was going to let you go, but you've cued me to my last question. You talked about complacency. You've had an experience of working with Mr. Modi as Prime Minister now for the last 1 year. A lot has written and been said about how he likes to work long hours. His ministers are always on call. What is it like working with the man? Is he too tough?
Not at all. In fact, it's a complete wrong information. If it's said that we are on call or we are waiting for his phone call, in fact, he allows you to work in a free atmosphere.
When was the last time you took a break, Mr. Goyal?
Well, that's my choice. When I want to take a break, I can take a break. The issue is that people's problems are so many. I've inherited such a big hole that I believe a 59-day holiday is not for me to take. For me, I would put every one of those 59 days to work for the poor of India.
Mr. Goyal, we wish you the very best for the next 4 years of this
Thank
government.
you.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.